Yes, people, we back. Welcome to What Does Your Mum Think? Stories from the heart that makes mums proud. You get me? And we're back with another banger. Today we're chatting with Alex Center. I'm lucky enough to call Alex my friend these days. I remember when I was first trying to get out to Harlem, specifically New York, should I say. I reached out to Alex and he was kind enough to jump on a call with me and give his 2 cents. And it made it feel really possible for me. This is one that's really close to my heart. I'm glad we finally got the chance to do it. I know we go through some stories about Alex, how his mum inspired him to quit his job at Coke a little bit and reassure him, should I say, that it was going to be good. And set up an agency, build an amazing podcast, lead with care, and be a really valuable leader within this industry. We get into it, so enjoy this one. Please like, share, subscribe. We're moving forward. We're keeping it happening. Big love. Alex, broski, welcome to the What Does Your Mum Think podcast. What's going on, bro? How you feeling?
That's the intro? That's what we do around here?
That's we're fucking on, bro. You know what I mean?
Yo, good to see you, man. A pleasure as always. You bring the energy. Now I got to meet your energy. Typically, I'm the guy that brings the energy, but now I got to match you. But good to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you very much, right? We always kick things off with a little quick fire round. Warm up the cockles, as my mum says in the UK. Right. Favorite sport?
Basketball.
Boom. Favorite New York slice?
Either the Industry or L&B Spumoni Gardens.
Ooh, that's a new one for me.
Scars. Sorry.
Yeah, I love yeah, that's a good one too. Running or weights?
Definitely running for sure.
Yeah, nice. Best bit of design advice you've ever received?
Don't overthink it.
Yeah, sick. If you weren't a designer, what would you be?
Fuck, I'd be trying to do stand up, I think. I'd be trying to make people laugh.
Yeah, nice. If teenage Alex met present day Alex, what would he roast you for?
Putting back my earring, you know, it's the same earring that I wore in high school. I'd be like, you know, you're still rocking that earring, dude. Like, come on, you know, how old are you?
And to finish with the biggest look, mum, I'm a designer moment.
Last year I did a talk at the Museum of Art and Design here in the city, and I got to bring my parents, and they got to sort of see me do my thing and talk through my career on a stage in front of a room. And yeah, that was a really special night for me, and we went to dinner afterwards, and I think it was really special to be able to kind of share that night with them. So that's probably it for sure.
Yeah, I love it, bro. They're the ones that matter, innit? Love it. Right, amazing. Right, I got 4 stages for you, right? So stage 1,
fuck,
Alex.
Let's go. Through the stages.
Through the stages. We're designers.
Phases,
right,
phases, yeah.
Phases,
okay.
yeah. Phase 1 we'll say.
Okay, yeah.
Phases. Right, so your mum, and big up Joni. I know she's hopefully listening to this one.
That's right, yeah, of course. Yeah, shout out to Joni, yeah.
Big up Joni. She was a hippie, a artist, and a calligrapher at heart. And your dad was a dentist. Sorry, I don't know your dad's name, but big up
David.
Your dad too. Big up
up
David. And he told you not to be a dentist.
He didn't tell me not to be a dentist. It was just kind of like I wasn't interested to be a dentist. That was never in the cards for me. Not a path. So he was open to whatever I wanted to be, but I chose not to be.
Which parts of both of them still show up in your work today?
Fuck, man. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I get my creative instincts from my mother. She's sort of the outgoing, personable, loving kind of you know, she calls my, you know, the waitresses like, you know, babe at a restaurant. You know, she's the sort of like the where I kind of get that sort of trying to sort of like be a person that sort of makes other people happy. I think I get that from my mom, and certainly a lot of the sort of creativity. But I think I get like sort of my pragmatic and sort of like my sort of my more introspective side from my father, who is someone that like, you know, kind of is, you know, more thoughtful, and certainly someone that makes decisions with purpose and thought behind them. So I think I'm, you know, sort of a bit of mix of art and science. And I think, you know, the sort of business side of me, my father owned independent dentistry practice for quite a while. And so I think the business side of me and sort of the preparation side of me certainly comes from my father, and then sort of my mother is sort of more the hippie artist side.
Love it. That's a nice formula, bro. That's a lovely balance.
Yeah, they're good people. Good folks.
Big up. In like the household then back in the day, what was like the early signs that you was gonna, do this, or did you love making things?
Yeah, I love to draw. Like that was kind of
Yeah,
the thing that I would do for fun with my mom. Like as a
yeah, nice.
kid, I always make this joke that like before the internet, we had these things called hobbies, and so we used to do things for fun. And mine was drawing with my mom, and she does like lettering. Like I said, she did calligraphy, and so I just always liked to draw letters and things like that. And I would do still life things, and then in school, like all my friends had skills. They were like good at music or good at sports, and I wasn't really good at anything. I tried my best. I played the drums, I played lacrosse, I played basketball, like, but I wasn't good at any of those things. But I could draw, and so like in classrooms, I would kind of like draw like the girls in class, be like, let me draw you, or sort of like I would draw some things in like or in like an art class, like I could draw, and people would be impressed by that, and my teachers were like, oh, he's got some ability, some god-given talent in drawing. And so that always made me feel good. And so for me, that was really kind of like, yeah, where it kind of starts is like, okay, this is my thing, this is my corner of the
Hmm.
world, and my path potentially for, yeah, maybe a career.
Yeah, nice. Where did graphic design come into it though? Where was the transition from drawing and you figured out graphic design?
Later, yeah, no, I went to school just to like study art. Like I didn't sort of have
Mm.
a concentration. I didn't really know what graphic design was until I was in school. And in college, I went to SUNY Buffalo, which is sort of just like a
Yeah.
sort of regular sort of college university. And so I was in the art department, so I knew I wanted to like study art. I had gotten into art. That's how I got into the school. But I then had to sort of find a concentration. And so in my first year, you take sculpting, you take painting, you take drawing,
Mm.
you take all those kind of classes. And then you have to kind of figure out like an individual path within that to sort of get your sort of concentration. And so I didn't really know what a graphic designer was until I sort of had to pick between. I knew I liked making things on computers, and I knew I loved brands. And so for
Mhm.
me, that kind of led me to this path where I was either going to be like, back then, I'm an old man, like it was like computer art, which was like motion, illustration, like animation kind of things, like people that would go on to maybe do like movies or things like more sort of in the 3D world, or the sort of more 2D world, which was more like communication design, branding, identity, logos. And I remember to this moment where I was in my sort of like I was in my college apartment like room I shared with like two other guys. And so I had this like little like closet room, and I remember being on the sort of school's website trying to like figure out what concentration I wanted to pick for my degree. And it sort of was like graphic design or sort of communication design. And it was like graphic designers potential, like what the like job is that like potentially people get after they take this class. And it was like they do logos, and they do identity, and they do brochures or merchandise and all these things. And I was like, that's what I want to be. I want to be a graphic
Yeah,
designer. Like
nice.
when I grow up, that's my job. And like that I've never looked back.
Amazing. You're obviously a New Yorker at heart. Um, like, has New York always been like a big part of your identity?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I grew up here. I grew up out on Long Island, so I grew up in the suburbs, and I would come into the city as a kid, to like go to like concerts or Broadway shows or things like that. And New York is just like it's funny. Like where you're from is just who you are in many ways. Like it's you don't control it. You don't get to pick it. And so for me, I've just always been a New York guy, and I didn't realize how much of a part of my identity it was until much later, I think. And when I sort of like, some of my friends moved to other states, and like my girlfriend moved to Chicago, and who's my wife now. And so there was this sort of moment when we both had good jobs in different states, and we did long distance. And I remember sort of like having conversations with her, was like, maybe I should move to Chicago. And I was starting to like potentially interview, or I was interviewing at jobs in places in Chicago, potentially to leave New York. And that is the moment where I really figured out that I'm a New Yorker. and like and I don't fit in, or maybe don't resonate with like the Midwest or LA or other places where I've been that like are great cities, amazing places to visit, but I just couldn't live there because of like my New York constitution. And like I've only lived in this state my whole life. I've never lived anywhere else, and like I might never. I might never. And I may be biased, but I think it's the greatest place on planet Earth. And I've been to a lot of amazing cities, and I think it's the best one still.
Yeah, I love it. Say no more, mate. I mean, even with that, where you intern then at the Knicks naturally, do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like, Jesus Christ, what a lovely fit that is.
Yeah, thanks, man.
How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think growing up as a kid in New York, like I'm a sports fan. My dad is a huge sports fan. My mom's a huge
Yeah.
sports fan. Like I grew up in a sports family, and like so we would go to Met games, go to Knick games. Like we were just and to this day, we still like go home and like talking to my parents about the Australian Open that like they tape because it's 3 a.m. here in New York, but they watched it the next day, and so they're legit sports fans, and so I grew up in that, and so my dream job was to be the creative director for the New York Knicks, and still is in many ways. Like that's my like number one dream job is to be a designer and be a creative person that works for my favorite basketball team. When I was in college, and once I figured out graphic design was sort of my path, there's this sort of normal sort of process of getting a summer internship. And in my senior year, I started exploring what internships were out there in New York for me to get, and one. I was at Madison Square Garden working in the art and design department for the New York Knicks and New York Rangers because there was like, they're owned by the same people. So I got that gig. I applied and I got and I interviewed and I got the job being an intern. And yeah, my professors at sort of the art department weren't like super thrilled because they obviously wanted me to go like take an internship at some sort of New York design studio or a Pentagram or Milton Glaser, like one of these sort of more institutional sort of design places. And but for me, I was like, no, this is my path. This is my dream, is to work for the Knicks. So being an intern in the summer of 2006 was that was my job, and I was there for about 3 months or so, and it was a real surreal and amazing experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, Alex, it's like something I'm like very kind of conscious of now, having left uni. And like, especially obviously speaking from my experiences in the UK, they very much put, as they should, and not in a bad way, but they very much put like design agencies there to be the thing that you kind of shoot for. Like, like you said, like shooting for your Pentagram, shooting for your Turner Duckworth, shooting for your JKR, whatever it may be. I love how you went internal, bro, and found that. Like, that's sick. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think a part of it was like also I just wanted to like impress my friends and like being like
It's fucking like, is cool, bro. Even now, like working at MSG, well, that's wild.
That's the thing. It's like if I told my friends that I was interning at Turner Duckworth, no one would, be very
impressed.
What
you're saying, yeah.
But if I told my friends I interned at Nike or I interned for the Knicks, it was a cool thing. And so I was, for me, that was just that's what made me excited about it, was partly the job, but partly like, what I would tell my friends that what I was doing or what like, and so for me, like being on the brand side, I wasn't really considering it like, oh, brand side versus agency, but I do agree with you that most colleges promote like sort of working on the agency side or working as a freelancer or independent practitioner or sort of like working as a designer. But because of the time, and maybe that's changed a little bit now, like there wasn't a lot of conversation about the in-house path, and more than 50% of designers working today are working in-house. So I do think it's important that people talk about that and represent that and sort of try to, like, a big part of my career has been trying to convince people that working in-house is cool.
Yeah. I could 100%, bro. And I think, like you said, just going internal and away from design and graphic design and being like, what do I actually love? If you love music, there's a place in music for design, and stuff like that.
I tell kids all the time, I'm like, what are you passionate about? Like outside of this career, like what do you like to do in your free time? Like what is it that lights you up? And if it's movies, if it's music, if it's sports, if it's, whatever, it's like, yeah, there are roles where you get to sort of be a designer that works on those type of projects, and that's out there for you. And design is so ubiquitous, and there's so many places where you can work as a designer. It's like, why wouldn't you want to sort of have that intersection of something that you really love and sort of, what you like to do? And I think that's the dream.
Yeah, it really is, Alex. I love that. And at whatever stage in your career too, even if you go in design agency first and then go in-house, or then go and work at your thing that you're passionate about, you can switch these things up and start again, so to say,
Yeah, there's no right path for any of this, and you just got to go with what feels good for you. And for me, I guess, like, working at a brand that I was a fan of, that felt like the dream at that time. And so, yeah, I encourage anyone and everyone to sort of, yeah, kind of go with what would make them excited to wake up and do this job.
Yeah, love that, Alex. That's a sick take. So moving into phase two, like your vitamin water stage, was you a fan of Glasso? Because you was the first designer at Glasso, weren't you, back in the day, way back when?
Yep.
How did that come about? Was you a fan of that brand before you ended up working there?
I was, yeah, and I had just been introduced to it, sort of like about a year that I before I was before I started working there. And yeah, it was kind of a natural sort of transition because I, had that summer internship and then graduated from school, and then just like every designer out there was sort of like, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go work? And so I like started interviewing at all sorts of places. Like it wasn't just like in-house places or agency side. Like, I remember I like had this like big giant leather portfolio, and I would just go to interviews. I interviewed at like HBO. I interviewed at like an agency called Code and Theory, if you are familiar with them. Like I interviewed at like a decent amount of places, and I just happened to get an interview at Vitaminwater, which is called Glasso, like you said. It was through just like some sort of like random job board posting, and it was a recruiter there that was looking for sort of like, sort of, they were filling all these roles at this company that was sort of exploding in the beverage space. And I was a fan of the brand. The packaging is iconic, and I was a drinker, but I went in there, and the coolest part about it was that they were sort of doing a lot of work in the sports world because they had just signed all these athletes to be endorsers for Vitaminwater in local markets. People like Shaq were promoting in Miami, or David Wright, who's baseball player, was promoting in New York, and Ray Lewis was promoting in sort of Baltimore. And so it's like these players, these athletes were all sort of getting sponsorship deals with Vitaminwater. And so a lot of the design work and a lot of the sort of like things that I was doing in that job once I got it was sort of doing like local activations for events or for retailers with athletes at the core of it. And because I was this sports fan that also was a designer, that also had this experience working at the Knicks, it was kind of like a dream job for me. And also I was a good fit for what they needed. So it just kind of worked out perfectly for me. And I met my boss, Chad Hogan, who you met at the center party.
Chad,
And Chad gave me, he was recently hired as a creative director. He had come from music, and because 50 Cent was a big part of the Vitaminwater brand at this time, sort of he was sort of putting together a team of in-house designers that would sort of handle all sorts of different types of jobs. And yeah, I was the first one he hired.
Yes, people, quick one. I always remember starting out in packaging design, absolutely buzzing for my mum to finally understand what I did for a living. And the first time she held something that I had designed, it all clicked for her. And then I told her that I'd won an award for it. You know how it is. There ain't nothing better than a proud mum, and that's why I'm partnering with the Pent Awards. If you've poured your heart into a bit of packaging design over the past year, enter your finest work into Pent Awards 2026. Get the recognition you and your team deserves, and most importantly, make Mumsy proud. You get me? Come on, the one that matters, innit? You have the potential to be holding one of these shiny little numbers that I've got in my hand here. I might have pinched these ones, but we're getting there. And yeah, big love to Pent Awards for backing the craft for 20 years, and this is the legacy year, so even more a reason to enter and be a part of history. So yeah, the deadline's the 27th of March. You can find a link in my bio, and you all know Mumsy loves a deal, so I've got a little coupon code for your head tops. Enter Make Mum Proud, all uppercase, at checkout, and get your award entries in right now. Run it up, don't sleep, make Mumsy proud. Big up Pent Awards. Let's go, people. Good luck. I love that. It's a small team doing big things. Like, what's the atmosphere look like there, Alex? And how has that helped kind of like shape even Chad's leadership? Like, how has that helped shape your leadership today?
It had a huge influence on me, actually. So many things. Like, Chad is such a personable person and just like loves being around people and like loves having a good time. And, again, like the team that I was on, sort of this creative team, started to build out. And it, it was probably like 10, 12, 15 people at its max. And those people are still some of my closest friends today. Like we have a group chat and it's still going from now 15 years ago. So it's like
Nice.
these people are legit, like more than just coworkers. And, we used to go on like offsites. We used to do things together as friends. And that is something I bring here to centers like we do, offsites and things like that, and try to create that sort of same sense of culture. And also on the sort of work side of things, like Vitaminwater was sort of this like super unique beverage that like was doing things so unlike any other water at that time. And I just remember the sort of whole mentality around that business was, and that brand was like, we don't want to be seen like any other water, right? Typical water ads have like streams and mountains and, things that are just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so crisp and clean in the water. And it was just like, Vitamin Water was so different. It was sports, it was music, it was culture, it was, this just like really sort of renegade kind of energy. And it came from Queens and it just was like so unique and different. And so I reference that brand all the time because our whole thing was like we wanted to stand out, we wanted to be different, and we didn't want to do ads like other people did ads. We didn't want to do, sort of commercials or packaging or anything that seemed anything remotely like water.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that's the best lesson in branding you could possibly get. It's like whatever the category is, do the fucking
Yeah.
opposite. Like go the
Yeah,
other
bro.
way. And it's just like that to me was the main, takeaway of like building a brand that was really kind of an iconic brand of that decade.
Sick, bro. Love it. I mean, you brought up 50 a minute ago. There's a saying that goes about that he said, you must think you're pretty special, Alex.
Yeah.
Tell me this story.
Yeah, so 50 Cent was a huge part of the Vitaminwater brand. I always give him so much credit because at this time, like celebrities were paid to be endorsers of brands, but they weren't equity holders like they are
Mm-hmm.
today or founders like they are today. Like today, every single celebrity has a brand and something that they're selling that's like they're a part owner of. But back in the day, that wasn't really the case, right? Like that just didn't exist. And so 50 really as a businessman, and this has been proven out over the last 2 decades, is like he was incredibly smart. Was like he didn't just take dollars to promote Vitaminwater, he took equity. And so
Mm.
he created his own flavor, which was Formula 50. So he was like a pioneer and a sort of like renegade in sort of this idea of like he was not just an endorser. He wasn't just a guy celebrating. He was like seen as the part owner. Like he was seen as like people thought 50 Cent owned Vitaminwater. And people would come up to me and I would say I work for Vitaminwater and they would think that I worked for 50 Cent. Like they thought that he was like my boss or some shit. And so, but he was involved. And like I remember like he would go on red carpets with Formula 50 and he'd be like, what other rapper's got his own beverage, And so that was kind of like his whole thing was like
Sick.
he was a rapper, but he was also a businessman, and Vitaminwater was this thing. So
Yeah.
we did a lot of stuff with 50, and in one of my sort of like great moments working there, I pitched this idea that kind of like the Sports Center commercials where the sort of athletes work in the office. It's called This is Sports Center. It's like the longest running commercial, and they have like these amazing commercials where the like LeBron stole someone's chair and it's like a giant sort of like king's chair, and it's like or like Danian Tomlinson is doing the mail in the mailroom but he can't see because he's got a visor on. So long story short, it's just like this idea that these athletes work for the sports company, media company. In a sort of similar idea, I had this idea that like what if 50 Cent, because that was the sort of cultural sort of belief, was that he worked for Vitaminwater. What if we gave him a lot of jobs in the office? And so one of those things was, we had this lab. We had a flavor lab where food scientists were making Vitaminwater in our office in Queens, which was really cool looking back. And we had this idea, or I had this idea that like we should have 50 come to the lab and like wear a lab coat and wear this kind of thing. And yeah, and we sold it into our bosses and sold it to 50 Cent, and he was down for it. And then when came time to do the shoot, I was introduced as the young designer that came up with this idea for the campaign, and he just like looked at me and said, "You must think you're pretty special." And it was like very intimidating because it was at this time 50 Cent was like, like he looked like The Rock. He was like so jacked. He was massive, and he's still big, but like he was, dude. I mean, steroids. Like I mean, he was just so giant. And it just was kind of like again a really fun moment in my life where someone had introduced me as sort of sort of trying to give me credit. I was a child, I was probably like 23 or something. And it was like, this kid came up with all this, and he just was like, yeah, you must think you're pretty special. And I'll never forget it.
Yeah, that's sick, bro. You gotta love that little bit of an acknowledgement. I always remember the where he's fucking, is he drinking it on like a rooftop and he slips on it?
Yeah,
Or something
yeah. No, that was for something called Vitaminwater 10. Which was 10 calories.
Is the
didn't go very well.
He's the king of trolling, bro. I've just seen what he's just done for the Super Bowl with DoorDash about and playing on being a troll with beef.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know what I mean? It never ends. It's sick, bro.
I mean, listen, 50 Cent is a genius. Like, I will say that.
Yeah,
and I've been saying that for a long time. Like, because people, again, now they know. Now they know that he's a shrewd businessman and a really smart guy. Like, he doesn't drink or smoke. Like, he's just always been about his business, and it's not just music. It's full 360. And like that Vitaminwater deal, like I talk about it now because it really set the trend. And like obviously the company gets acquired by Coca-Cola for $4 billion, and he made a couple $100 million.
Yeah, that's gangster. Yeah,
from that deal. And I remember like that was such a big thing in the industry that like 50 Cent was, I got this Vitaminwater.
4.1 billion. Did you get a slice? I've heard you talk about this before. You got the 0.1, didn't you?
Yeah, I got the 0.1 and the 4.1 billy. No. I did get a slice, and the truth is I did, and I always say that I got like 22-year-old rich, but yeah. Didn't last quite as long as maybe you might think, but like it was I got a slice. 50 Cent got a much bigger slice. But it was transformative and a really special moment in my career, and I still talk about it fondly, of course. And I talk about it really, in two ways, right? Personally, it definitely like set me up for the next chapter of my life, which was working for Coca-Cola. Yeah. And then, on a bigger scale, like taught me the value of design. Like we had built this really special brand. People were really connected to it. People, sort of were proud to wear it as an accessory on, sort of on the streets. And it was cool to be seen with Vitaminwater. And it was everywhere. And it was just this like hot beverage that was like a lifestyle brand, and Coca-Cola and Pepsi both were trying to acquire the business, and it was worth $4 billion. And I always say that like Coca-Cola had Dasani, it had other water brands, and they could have put vitamins into them, right? And I think they later did, but that's not what they were buying. They were buying that connection and the sort of like the brand and all the things that we had done to make it special and to make people love it. And so I always say that's like, my sort of like number one lesson is like what we do is incredibly valuable. And like it could be worth billions of dollars if we do it right. And that was my sort of lesson at a very young age, building a brand that was worth $4 billion.
Amazing, Alex. Like, it's like when you think back as well, it's kind of like before the lifestyle brand became lifestyle brands, and now there's lifestyle brands everywhere that's speaking to every consumer, and everyone's so conscious of it, right?
Yeah, no, I think it is it was the first time I'd ever heard the term lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some people are like still to today, like, what does that even fucking mean? But like, it just means it was more than just a drink. It just like was more than just something that people would consume and throw out. Like people wanted to be seen with it. It meant something. It had identity attached to it. That was, you were into fashion, you were into design, you were into, sort of music. Like it just was more than a drink. And I think, I think that's what we try to create in all the projects that we do now. So much of my like education in design and branding, again, to this day, I'll always kind of go back to Vitaminwater. And I think there's so much to be learned, again, through that brand. And of course, like it's just continues to be a source of inspiration for me.
Yeah, it's amazing because you can see the DNA. So like when you did, United Sodas, and like when you're referencing Pharrell when he did the Adidas crepe in it, and he had all the colors on the spectrum, and there's that kind of like, it's connective tissue between fashion and culture, which again your podcast is built onto, and you inject it into your podcast as well. I love what you say about like it's like the fucking Blank Street thing. When everyone in New York, walks around with Blank Street, little matcha tea, it becomes a part of you, and people are proud and want to be seen with these bits of packaging in the hand. And like you said, that's powerful.
That's what we do. That's the world that we build in, and that's the feeling we're trying to create, which is love and, like you said, identity. I think it's not about the matcha. It's not about the.
It's not about the matcha.
It's not about the matcha. But you're right. It's a symbol. And we're all,
Is
I think now, especially now, of course, that we all have our profiles and our identities online. And
mm,
so much of it is about communication to other people. IRL, like the hat that you wear
mm,
and,
yeah,
sort of the logos you put on your chest. And then, of course, like what you post online and what you associate with. And all of that communicates to other people like who you are and what you're about. And yeah, I think of you in pink and I think of Supreme. It's like I know who you are because of the brands and the things that you associate yourself with. And so
yeah,
I just have always felt like that's what that we're in the business of creating that. Like, and so, yeah, you can certainly create a thread pretty easily from Vitaminwater to United Sodas to Bero
yeah.
to like these brands. It's like they all kind of have a similar kind of theme and feeling. And yeah, they're all beverages. They all serve different needs from a product perspective. But I think the identity and the brand that's built around them, and I've been very fortunate to be a part of some really amazing brands in the beverage space. And it's still fun to me. It's still, and there's so many in the world at this moment. And it's one of the most competitive spaces in
Yeah.
the fucking supermarket. But man, is it cool. And I still think it's fucking sick. Like one of my buddies, he was a part of the Poppy branding project.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think like the fact that like they were acquired for $2 billion this year and they're doing a Super Bowl commercial with Charlie, like again, it's just like, it's all to me, it's like, it's still cool to me. And that's why I
Mm-hmm.
thank you for shouting out the podcast. Like that's why we do the podcast, or I love doing the podcast, is
Yeah.
like just talking about these brand moments and these cultural things that are happening. And there's a lot more today than there's ever been, but I still am fascinated by it and I still love it.
Amazing, Alex. It's sick. So just to mention this, you spent 10 years then at Coke. You went and worked at Coke, right, for 10 years. Vitaminwater, Smartwater, and
Yep.
Powerade. You know what I mean? So you
Yep.
built other brands there. I'd love to go in more in depth with them, but I'm going to keep it moving. But I do know, so into phase 3, care at the center. I want to speak about center and how you lead with care, which I fucking love. But this before I do, before you quit Coke, to encourage you, Mumsy bought you a jacket with your name on the back that with centre on the back, which is hard, still hard to this day. I know you still got that.
Thank
It's a
you.
varsity jacket, in it. It's sick. And she told you, Alex can do this. How did that feel?
Yeah, I mean, I was terrified. I think
Yeah, yeah.
as someone, and I admit this, and I say it publicly, that I'm not a big risk taker. I'm not a big change guy. I like comfort. I'm not Alex Honnold. I don't climb
Fucking hell.
things. I don't do that in my personal life. But I think at Coke, I'd been there for 10 years. Like 10 years after that acquisition was like a really great run. And I had some, like, again, great memories, and I got to do some pretty amazing things at Coke. But I think looking back at that moment, I was turning 30. And I think for me, that feeling of turning 30 and being like, what am I doing with my career? What am I doing with my life? Like, I think, and then this happened to me recently when I turned 40. And so it's like, I just think these moments sort of help me, and I think for a lot of people, you sort of take inventory of sort of things at a sort of high level. And at that moment, I was turning 30, and I was kind of like I'd been in house in sort of the same job for since I was 21, and so I was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this, or how much I didn't feel connected to it as much as I did in those sort of early days. And I think I just started to, I'm a guy like you, like, this is my love, and I'm super fucking passionate about it. It makes me happy. It's like I would do it as a hobby. It's like it's so much a part of who I am. So at a point when it started to not hit the same and it started to feel like a job is when I started to really start to think, okay, I don't want to fall into this where I'm just kind of like, sleepwalking my way through these meetings and doing this work and not really feeling that sort of joy every single day. So I knew I had to make a change. I knew that was sort of, I knew that was clear. And then I think, of course, like I started thinking about like working at other companies, right? I think I interviewed at like every massive tech platform. I interviewed at Apple, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter. Like I think, and for a minute, I thought that's what I was going to do, was going to kind of, stay in house, but go to like a sort of more tech a sort of side of things. And none of that really panned out, luckily. And so I was working with Collins, and I always give Brian and Leland and their team a lot of credit, because I had never worked at an agency before at all, but that was the closest I had. The experience I had was working with them as I was the client and they were the agency, but like they really opened the doors to me and let me kind of hang out there and just like work with them in a way that felt like I was a part of their team,
Mm.
which was really special. And so then that's really where sort of the sort of turning point for me about sort of maybe starting my own agency, Collins Center, and just like kind of doing the sort of my version of that and really just kind of like putting my name on a door, taking on clients, and yeah, kind of starting really as a freelancer, but like knowing that I wanted to hire other people and to bring other designers into the mix and start to build a team and do and sort of do the Collins thing. And so for me, that was yeah a scary decision. And I remember I told my mom, and she was supportive, and of course, like there's she's still a mother after all. She's like, "Are you sure you want to leave your very comfortable Coca-Cola job?" Like it's and like of course, like there's a certain thing that like she experienced that I experienced, which is like telling people that you were a design director at Coca-Cola like sounds really cool and like important, and I didn't want to walk away from that. And I'm sure from her perspective she would tell people, my son is a design director at the Coca-Cola company. Like, it sounds important, and it was important. So I think walking away from that was scary for both of us because it was
Mm-hmm.
so uncertain and unknown. She had posted a photo on Instagram of her wearing a collegiate jacket, a black and white one. And I left a comment in it and I said, "Do you still have this jacket?" And it was just, again, just like asking, because I steal clothes from my mom all the time. And so that was sort of a comment I left and didn't even really think about it. And then after I decided to officially launch the company and like told her that I was doing this, she got me the jacket and put center on the back and said, "Good luck." And it was a really beautiful thing. And then I did like a photo shoot because I was like, oh, I need to announce my studio with a photo shoot. And so I wore the jacket in all the photos. And
Yeah,
yeah,
nice.
now I give them to my team members when they come on to the center team full time. And so there's like 6 jackets over there on the wall on rings. Yeah, it's a cool tradition. And yeah, mom support.
Bro, that is so sick. It warms my heart so much. And what I love as well is very much like, you got the taste from Collins and you've seen it as possible through Collins, but you weren't, if this is the right word, industrialized from working at, branding agency. So you just embrace loads of mistakes, I can imagine.
Yeah, I didn't really know what it was like to work there. Like, if I'm being
Yeah,
completely honest,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was the client, of course. Like I got the best treatment ever. Like they got me, sort of yogurt and granola and like honey, and it was like, "Welcome, Alex, to our office." And of course, like but and so I say that lovingly because like obviously it looked awesome, and obviously Brian and Leland have built such a special company and such a special team, and like the culture there and everything like that I got to
Mm,
see, but I didn't actually work there. Like I
yeah.
just saw it from sort of from being around it. So I always
Yeah.
say like when I started center, like I knew a little bit from being a client, and then also from sort of having that experience working with an agency like Collins that puts such a value on design and brand and sort of strategy and everything that they were doing, and still do this day, that just is so important and so incredible, that I knew that I wanted to do it. I didn't know exactly how. That's like, I
Yeah.
want to be completely
Sick.
honest. Like I didn't really know what the fuck I was doing. I still don't totally know what the fuck I'm doing. But so I kind of just go with my gut, which what feels right for me, what feels right for center. And I do think that is a superpower at this point because I'm not just taking structure, I'm not taking process, I'm not taking anything as gospel because this is how I did it at this agency that I worked at. I'm literally making it up and tweaking it all the time. And I feel like every single year I'm kind of like, we can get better in how we do things from process perspective, or we can get better as a studio all the time. And I'm constantly thinking about how we can do that without really any roadmap other than like, I know we can do it a little bit better. There's no right answer to do any of this.
Mm,
And now, especially as things can change all the time in terms of what is expected of a brand design consultancy, like think it's better to not necessarily have anything that I'm tethered to in that way, because it's just about what feels right for me, my employees, and my clients. And that's really just like all I have to really answer to.
it's sick, bro. And I do want to say as well, big up Kevin.
Of course.
And big up the pod. Do you know what I mean? The front and center pod as well, alongside, obviously the design agency. One of my faves, bro. I've been
Thank
listening
you,
for
man.
time. That's
Thank
what
you.
first introduced. That's what I didn't even know you had an agency. I thought you were a podcast first, me, bro, when I first heard of you. You know what I mean?
That's kind of sick. Like I love when I meet people and they're just like, I know about you because of your podcast. And like, it still blows my mind that anyone would be introduced to our design studio via our podcast. Like, that is still cool to me. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being a supporter. And yeah, it's been really fun. We've been doing it for 5 years now, which seems insane, but it's a labor of love. And I think when I started the studio, I really wanted to be more than just another design agency. Like, there's so many agencies in New York, and of course, each one is different because of the people that work there and the people that found them. But I didn't want to just be another one. And so from day one, I was really interested in doing design, content, and media. Like, I just felt like I'd done a lot of talks at conferences and things like that. And I just felt like the design community, while, growing every year, feels like it's still underserved in terms of like the content and things out there. And I think, like, from sports, right? Like, as a big sports fan, like, there's so many amazing media companies and ESPN and Bleacher Report and, sort of all these places where you get your news in design, like, or get your news in sports. And like, there's these shows that, like, debate shows and, run all the time on TV, and they're just talking about what's going on in sports on a daily basis. And I just felt like there needed to be something like that in design and branding, because, like we were talking about earlier, there's so much shit going on all the time. And I feel like in sports, there's constantly trades and teams and games and all that stuff. But in design, now there's shit every day. Like, some company goes public, or something is like, sort of promo and commercial and ad and this and, collaboration and launches. And there's just so much shit going on. And I've always tried to keep my finger on the pulse of that. So when I started with this idea that Center would not just be a design studio, it would be a design studio and also put out design content or media in, sort of a second, sort of type thing. The show was the idea that I had, which is called Front Center. It was on our first website when we first launched Center. Center is a design studio that builds brands, and Front Center is a weekly show about design and culture. And the design studio took off and, sort of obviously took a lot of the attention in sort of the early first 3 years of doing client work. But once, things started to settle down and COVID happened, it was like, okay, it's time to do the show. And to be honest, Kevin, who is the best, was hired to do the show. Like, he's a designer, he is, a copywriter here, but he was an intern here. And the goal from his first day interning was to get the show off the ground. He was never actually supposed to be on the show. He was just supposed to be a producer of the show, which I think is funny now looking back, because the original idea was that it was going to be a rotating cast of people in the studio on the show. And it would just be kind of like people talking about things, but not, and Kevin would be behind the camera and sort of like producing, editing, etc. And then COVID happened, and Kevin and I were here, like the only two people working out of the office. And one day we're just like, fuck it, the show's a podcast, we're doing it, let's go. And it's you and I. And so it's been super fun. And Kevin is the best, and he's the best co-host, and he makes me laugh, in every episode. And yeah, it's just like the perfect person to do it with.
Yeah, you both fucking kill me, Right, so you've designed some killers, bro, Butter, United Sodas, as we mentioned before, Ghostwriter, even out of the drinks category. Inspires the fuck out of me. We mentioned this before as well, and again, with Vitaminwater, and you see these natural threads, zigging when everyone else is zagging. And it's something that I strive for, bro. It's why a lot of my work gets left on the cutting room floor. In a good way. It's usually the portfolio. What makes Center different with that? And like, how do you build that trust, Alex, consciously with a client to be able to break stuff?
Yeah, that's all relationship building.
Yeah.
I think like I said before, there's many agencies in the city. There's amazing agencies all around the world. And, I think why someone goes with one group versus another one really comes down to the people. And I think when it does sort of come up, it's like, we want to be partners. Like, I think coming from that in-house background, it's like, I care about the success of these brands, because not only do I want them to be successful for the people that have hired us, and because that's what we are being hired to deliver, I know that it will be connected to me. for the rest of my life, in the way that Vitaminwater and Smartwater, these brands that I was building in sort of my early career, I still talk about, right? And so I want these brands to be successful for all of us. And so their success is our success. And yeah, it's about really kind of forming good partnerships and relationships and trust, and, getting them to sort of, kind of believe that doing things that are risky and bold and courageous is the only way to make it work. And I think that is something that it's hard for a lot of clients, even the ones that say, like, we want to take chances, we want to do something different, we want to fuck it up. And it's like, people get scared. Each category has its norms and has its sort of things that people expect from sort of a brand in that space. And I think it's really important that you don't just put more stuff out there that's kind of the same. And because, in today's world, like, it's just going to go unnoticed. Like, it's just, people aren't going to break through. It's not going to grab people's attention. And yeah, maybe some brands have great, incredible products that, like, even if the branding isn't really stand out or disruptive in any way, like, they'll still get people to buy it. But I think for us, like, from day one, and kind of going back to that Vitaminwater sort of like history, it's like, we want to go into categories and we want to go into spaces and do things that no one's ever seen before, and things that feel different and things that feel meaningful and that connect with people. And I think that is, in my opinion, the point of branding. That's what we do as branding agency. And I think we have, United Toast is a great example. It's like, that was the first time in which we were really able to get a client through the relationship and through our work to go with the bold and courageous idea that we had put in front of them. And, like, credit to those guys, because, they saw safer designs. Like, we pitched 5 directions, I believe, in the first. I showed it at first round. Shout out to Armin and Brand New. Like, and that was clearly the one that was, like, the craziest, because it had nothing on it. Like, so minimal and so simple. And it's just like, of course, from a design perspective, you're like, sick, that looks awesome. But the truth is, it's like, from a business perspective, that's a huge risk. Like, it's a huge risk, and it's totally different. And I reference it a lot because it's that kind of risk that leads to the type of reward that I think everyone is looking for.
Agreed, yeah.
And then I think people, like, great brands come from great ambition. And I think that's not just on our side, right? Like, it's on their side as well. So you need to find those founders, those leaders, those clients that, like, really have that ambition to do something great. Otherwise, they're just going to kind of settle for something that feels like sort of, norm, or sort of like predictable, or sort of super familiar. And so I think for us, it's about trying to get those ideas that push things, and constantly just, like, pitching them and constantly putting them into the presentations, right? Like, that's the thing. I hate to say it, make it sound so simple, but it's like, if you hire us, like, there's a certain sense that, like, you do want to do something that's a bit bold, or it's a bit, and I don't mean from, like, a color and vibrancy perspective. I think it's like, you want to do something that's going to demand your attention. And I think that's kind of the reputation that we've built. And also, that's the thing that we sell. Like, we tell people that when they come to our door and they have a project, it's like, yeah, we build brands that demand attention and, like, don't go unnoticed. And, like, that's what we're about. And so, yeah, there's some people that want that and are comfortable, or sort of, like, understand that that's what you need. And then there's some people that are like, man, like, that's not for us. And that's kind of okay.
Yeah, you created a situation, though, like you said, the work you do is the work you do in it. So, like you said, I think that's an important point. People come to you knowing that they're going to be challenged, and yeah.
But sometimes people see it and then they're like, "Oh no," you know what I mean? Like, because you could brief in a project and be like, "Oh, I want to stand out. I want to grab attention.
Yes, bro.
Different. I want to go in a, I want to be unique. I want to be special." And then we show you what that looks like and do things that sort of feel like it's totally outside of the norms of a category, or feels like it's something that hasn't been done before in that space. And they're just like, "Man, like that." It does make some people uncomfortable, even after they've asked for it, or they know that we're gonna bring that. So yeah, it's definitely, it's always a work in progress, and it's always like, yeah, and that's why I kind of start with relationships. It's like, you kind of have to find the ones that people want to do ambitious things and take chances and X, Y, Z. And then, like, even when you get them to see it, then you got to get them to go with it. And then you got to get them to not, like, change 100 things to make it safe, and then, like, make it sort of normal again. And then, it's just like that's the job, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
like people talk about, design. It's like, yeah, of course, making things is so fun and like putting it out there into the world, but like the work is in the relationships and the
Yeah.
client, sort of negotiating and the acquiring of projects and the sort of back and forth of changes and rounds. Because as you know, no one has ever just seen something and been like, "That's it, let's do it."
It's very rare. I've not had an experience in my career where it's gone like that anyway, Alex, so far.
It doesn't
Jesus.
happen all the time, it does happen, but it doesn't happen, and that's why there are phases, that's why there are rounds, and that's why there's always round two.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, you work with a lot of founders then. Is there a mistake that you feel like founders make when they get to like the design stage?
Great question. Huh. Yeah, I mean, I think we've been fortunate to work with some really good ones. So I think the mistake that sometimes founders make is thinking that designers should only just do design. And I think my whole career I've been trying to push up against this idea that like we're just, decorators or craftsmen, and that's our sort of like value in sort of building, a brand system, and that it's like just sort of delivering the thing that they believe that out of the sort of like 10 partners that they've hired for their company now that they've raised money or they have sort of like to get to launch, that like our design agency will do your logo, will do your packaging, will sort of do your guidelines, and then sort of like, kind of thank you for your time and sort of move on. And I think where, we try to really find these relationships where we can kind of influence things and be a part of, sort of some of the other parts of the experience of the brand, and have as much, sort of like, again, we don't need to do everything, but we want to be kind of helpful, and we want to be involved, or we want to sort of provide, some notes or thoughts or things. And I think that when the founders sort of like, again, let designers be more than just sort of makers, I think it typically works pretty well for all involved. Then but yeah, not every founder is sort of like willing to give up some of that control, or sort of like, wanting to sort of have sort of like one partner be involved in everything. It makes things sometimes harder, makes it more complicated to have sort of a company like ours involved in so many different parts of things. But, that's why I kind of think of us as we're a branding company, and branding is, sort of it's a sum of all these experiences and parts and things. And typically when we're involved with them, because we hold ourselves to such high standards and don't settle for things that we're not super, super proud of, like, yeah, it makes it a little bit harder, but also for them, but also the results are pretty good. And so sometimes people will think they can do it without us, and then then sometimes they come back to us and say, hey,
Yeah.
actually we actually do need your help in some of these areas. So yeah, that's my answer, I think, is putting designers in a box.
Yeah. Nice take. Lovely. Life work balance, Alex, is bollocks if you love your job. But how do you find
Yeah.
balance?
Yeah, I've had that take and been crucified a little bit for it, so I might not join you in that. But I used to say like, yeah, life work balance is bullshit because I love my work and my work is my life, and I do feel that way, right? Because so much
Mm.
of my work is who I am as a person, and it is hard to separate them. But what I will say is it is really important that you find inspiration, you find joy, you find fulfillment outside of work. And that's a lesson I've learned recently because like you said, like
Yeah.
so much of what I do is a hobby, and so much of what I do is brings me so much joy. And I think that's
Mhm.
actually why it makes it so hard to like put it away or step away from it or sort of prioritize other parts of my life. But it's important. And I think I've learned that lesson more recently as I turned 40, and I've been dedicating so much of my time and my energy and my everything to this career, to
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
path. And yes, I have a lot to show for it. I'm really proud of Center and everything that we've done, and I'm so proud to talk to you about all of this. And but it can't be everything, and so you have to find that time, and you have to find that sort of that balance, and in the other things. And yeah, like running, as you and I have talked about, has become a thing
Yep.
for me where I prioritize my health and sort of seeing friends and seeing family and doing things outside of the 10 to 6 and trying to put boundaries in place and trying to sort of really push myself to, yeah, step away from it so that I can live a more fulfilled life. And ultimately what happens is it tends to work out, back around. Like, it does help me be better as a person, and then I show up better for my team and my clients and the work. So it does actually have a way of coming around full circle here. But yeah, it's a hard thing when you do what you love to find that, yeah, it shouldn't be your entire personality. It shouldn't be your entire pie chart of who you are.
Yeah, I agree. And I say it really respectfully. You know, jiu-jitsu, martial arts, big for me, Alex. Do you know what I mean? I'd love to hear more about how your fitness journey has helped, change the way you lead and design yourself, you know what I mean? The way you think about things. I was listening to something the other day and they were saying about like balance being like a privilege. If you look at any entrepreneur, right, who's in the trenches trying to make something happen, bro,
Yeah.
it's got to be unbalanced. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, you ain't worrying about fucking eating 3 meals a day and rah. You're keeping the lights on at your studio. You're keeping, your salary's paid for your, whatnot. So, I think for me, the complete removal is when I'm getting strangled. You know what I mean? Because I can't, I
Sure.
literally,
Yeah.
or I'm going to die, bro. You know what I mean? Not literally, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's hard to be scrolling reels when you got a man choking you out from behind.
Or like
there,
fucking
Yeah,
sketching off, thinking about ideas. But and it's the same for running, right? I can go for a run and like put my music on and just completely switch off. And a lot of the time, that's when the clarity comes naturally. Think really hard about something, and then you get the light bulb moment.
100%. Yeah. Do you know how many times I've come to work and been like, I had this idea on my run this morning.
I've got it. It's when you're not thinking about it. It's when you're not. So it's like, so again, so that thing in it, if you chain yourself to a desk and you're like, right, I need to do this thing, remove yourself from a desk. And it's something that I think I've got pretty much down now. I'm confident in my abilities and, in design skills and whatnot. I'm confident in my subconscious. I think I should be saying that I'm going to come up and generate the fucking thing, Alex. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I like what you said, though. It is a privilege in many ways to sort of have that balance and to be able to feel comfortable in that balance. And yeah, like early days of Center, like I was, really some of the heaviest, sort of unhealthy, I've ever been. And I'm a guy that kind of goes up and down. And yeah, I mean, I just wasn't prioritizing myself at all. And that sort of really started to show. And like, you can go, you don't have to scroll too far and, sort of front and center, because we record the video on our show. You can see some interviews and I'm like, my face looks like I got stung by a million bees. And it's like, I was just like not taking care of myself and like not prioritizing health and wellness at all. And so, but I was, really focused on building Center and like really kind of like, food for me is comfort. And so it's pizza. Paulie G Slice Shop is not too far from our studio. And so, I would, work late nights and I would go walk over there and get a slice. And, at the end of the day, when they were closing up shop, they would give me 4, because they were going to throw them out or something. And so, I mean, pizza, I love food. I love to eat. But, I think after, Center's been, sort of in business for, a number of years, and I was turning 40. And so I had that moment again being like, what am I, what's going, my life, obviously Center's, sort of been so much a priority for me and sort of been doing well, but I really had to take that moment and say, okay, now I gotta take the time and put the focus on my health and my, me, and just like not like be constantly running from meeting to meeting to meeting, trying to like please everybody else and care about all these other, brands and projects and people and everything. And it just was like, just like I was putting myself last all the time. And so, the running really became a thing for me of like, I'm going to get in shape by the time I turn 40, and, having a goal and a deadline was really helpful as well. And sort of lost 60 pounds pretty
Big
naturally,
up,
just
Sick.
like from
Love
just by, being better, better eating, better sleeping, better, like just really just prioritizing all aspects of things and putting a little bit of boundaries in place and going home at work at a reasonable hour. Yeah. And then of course every day going to the gym and running, and sort of for me it's been transformative because I now sort of take that approach of like, okay, cool, like what else can I do to better myself that's not inside of this studio, and what else can I do to make sort of my life fuller, and it's not just health and wellness. So I think to me it's been really transformative and running the New York City Marathon was like my sort of like, sort of stamp on that, and being like, fuck yeah, that's a dream I've always wanted to accomplish. I did it, and fuck yeah. And it's like, cool, what's my next dream? And I like setting goals and achieving them. But
what is the next thing with fitness? Is there another one with fitness? Is there another? Are you going to come train jiu-jitsu with me?
I'm definitely not going to do jiu-jitsu with you at all. I'm going to be honest with you there. I'm not fighting anybody. Listen, if my mom is still listening, she knows. We're lovers. We're not fighters, and that's just not. That's not in the center makeup. As a family, because if this podcast is about her, what does your mom think? My mom thinks I shouldn't get into grappling or jujitsu or fighting because I would get hurt, and she doesn't want that for me. So
heard, brother, heard. Is there another thing you got in mind?
I'm gonna keep that a secret right now. I like to
say no more. Say no more. I like it. Yeah.
I like to lay low and build.
Yeah. Let the success make the noise,
and then shock the gram. That's what Jesus Nice. So I'm not a big like tell everyone what you're working on, planning on thing, because I like to keep it close to the vest. But yeah, man, I got some goals, I got some things, I got some plans, and yeah, man, it's fun. Crazy. And it's fun talking to you about it, man. You're a fucking legend. Like every time I see you, you just bring such a fucking positive, uplifting energy. And I'm so glad that you're doing this show. I'm so glad you're here in New York, because for the listeners, like Christian was like, he was trying to get here, and he was unhappy in a stage in his life. And every time I see you out there thriving in New York, it makes me happy, because yeah, man, it's like talking about taking big chances and risks. Like it's not easy to fucking leave your home to come to New York, and so many people do it, and I'm super sort of privileged and grateful that I grew up here. It's where I'm from, but I really meeting people like you and so many people here at the studio that come from all over the world. Like, man, the bravery to leave home and to not be 40 minutes from your mom's house to get a home cooked meal, and like for me, like I really, that to me is impressive. Couldn't do that. I'm not going to work in Berlin or something. Like I couldn't pick up my life and move across the world. I'm a creature of comfort. So I really admire you and so many people that come here from all over the world to do this thing. And it's that inspires me.
I appreciate you, Alex. And I said that on the intro, but like, I'll never, dude, from listening to the podcast, I was like, I'm hitting this. Obviously, I found out you had an agency then. I found out he does some work in that as well. And then I hit you up, and you kindly jumped on a call with me. And I'll never forget the way you signed it off, bro. And you was like, from BK to Manchester. And now it's from Harlem to BK, bro. Harlem to Brooklyn. And I'm here, bro, 2 years deep. Like,
you ain't going nowhere. Yeah.
It's sick. Listen, I really appreciate you, bro. Everything you put into the world, and to be able to call you a friend, Alex, is fucking sick, lad. It really does mean the world to me from the bottom of my heart. The last question, the final question, we spoke about it a lot, so I know the preface, but what does your mum think?
She's proud. My mom is proud. My mom is, I'm a mama's boy, proud of it, and have always been, and will always be. And she's the inspiration. She's the she's the person I call, when I'm having a tough day, and she's always there listening to my stories. She's the best support system, and she's one of one. Shout out to Joni. She's she thinks I'm pretty special, just like 50 Cent. She thinks I'm special, and I'm starting to believe her.
Big up, bro. You can hit him up at Center on Instagram. Check out the Front and Center podcast. If you don't know, you should know. Appreciate you very much, and I'll be seeing you, my man.
Appreciate you, man.